So for all the difficulty that Dems are now having defining what they stand for, besides DEI and government waste, the GOP has to still come together and jumpstart President Trump's favored one big beautiful bill, but it seems only the House is willing to do so. For the very latest, joining us now are two members of the House, Republican members, Texas Congressman Pat Fallon, member of the House Oversight Committee, and Florida Congressman Greg Steube from the House Ways and Means Committee, where all those interesting tax bills come from. Gentlemen, great to see you. Thanks for being here. Let me start with you, Congressman Steube. The House is moving on Trump's one big beautiful bill, but what is happening with the Senate? They seem stuck in this two-bill idea, right?
Yeah, it seems as though the leadership over there wants to do two bills. That's their prerogative to do that, but the House has been very firm. Our chairman in the Ways and Means Committee has been very firm that we want to do one big, beautiful bill like the president has talked about. I think from a procedural standpoint, that'll certainly be easier. The budget resolution passed the House Budget Committee last week, so now we will go to the floor when we get back into Washington next week and hopefully pass that budget resolution on the floor.
Well, Pat Fallon, why can't the president, I just asked the panel this question in the last segment, why can't the president use that big, beautiful political capital that he has to get what he wants?
Well, I think he is, and he's definitely our quarterback. We're a team, and the House Republicans are a family, as Greg can attest to, but maybe sometimes we're a dysfunctional family. But I think we can get there, and DOGE has got a lot of momentum, as you said, David, amongst the American people. The taxpayers are sick and tired of their money being squandered and people talking about it for decades and nobody doing anything about it. And finally, we have a president that's going to take bold action. And I'm willing and I'm ready to work and very enthusiastic.
You are
to work with President Trump.
on the DOGE committee, right? So you know what's going on there. I'm just curious. I know you have Democrat friends. Some of them in the House are your friends. What do they tell you about it? I mean, they must know that it's a losing battle to be fighting for waste and fraud, which is what they seem to be doing.
There's a few of them, but their voices are kind of in the wilderness with the left. There's a few reasonable Democrats, and they know and they see the writing on the wall, but they're outnumbered. And so the Democrats want to just play contrarian because let's be honest, David, the federal workforce, they're counting on their votes in Virginia to get those 13 electoral votes in presidential elections. Without that, Virginia would go red. And it almost did this time with President Trump. So we're going to continue on to do the right thing and let the Democrats play politics.
Well, that's Congressman Steube. The problem is that there's work to do now, and they could still interfere. I understand their lawfare doesn't seem to be getting as far as they wanted to get, but they could still mess up a lot of the president's plans. And that's why it's so important to get the Senate in step with what you guys are doing with the Ways and Means Committee. Is there any way that you can work together with the Senate?
Yeah, and I think this will work itself out. Look, the House will pass their bill. Once the budget resolution passes, it'll go to the Senate. Then the Senate will go through their process and probably send a bill that is changed to the House, and we'll go through the process that the House and the Senate typically go through. Republicans should be and will be united. I was actually very surprised, pleasantly surprised, that the budget resolution passed the committee unanimously. On the Republican side, it was a split party line vote. So that shows that we're here to deliver on President Trump's agenda. Obviously, everybody has different ideas of what that looks like. But you're right. If the president said this is exactly what I want and has a press conference and we all come together behind what that looks like, but getting into the weeds and getting the details can be a challenge because you've got 4.5 trillion, 4.7 trillion and TCJA. So you've got a lot of things that you got to work out the details on. But I think at the end of the day, we're going to get President Trump's priorities passed.
Well, by the way, we're going to get into the numbers a little bit. That might not please the audience, but this ridiculous notion, Pat Fallon, that you have to pay for something that actually increased the amount of money we're getting from taxes. This $4.5 trillion cost of extending the tax plan is the most ridiculous thing that I've heard in all my life covering Washington, D.C. It's a long time. Who's coming up with these made-up numbers when, in fact, the tax cuts of 2017, tax rate cuts, have brought in an extra $1.5 trillion? An extra. It's an adding to the budget, not a subtracting from the budget. They don't understand adding and subtraction.
I think it's that new math that Al Gore was talking about all those years ago. The CBO,
Where is it coming from?
Budget Office, Well, the CBO, they'll score it, and they're wrong a lot of the time. When you have that kind of growth, when you stimulate that kind of massive growth, considering there are trillions of dollars on the sidelines right now, because what the business community and private sector want is stability. They want certainty, and they don't have it right now. Once we pass this, if we can extend it either for 5, 7, 10 years, or permanently, then that provides them that stability and that peace of mind where they can invest that money. And guess what? When goods and services exchange hands, the government takes a little bit in something called taxes, and that increases revenue.
Yeah.
So just like Ronald Reagan used to say, when you cut taxes, you actually grow revenue.
Yeah, Ronald Reagan, and by the way, JFK said the same thing, and both of them were right, all three of them, Trump, Reagan, and JFK. I just want a little more on DOGE. There was a Wall Street Journal editorial that quoted the Government Accounting Office, not DOGE, but the Government Accounting Office came out with a report last spring, Congressman Steube, that between $233 billion and $521 billion is lost annually just to fraud. That doesn't include the waste that goes in there, but that's just the fraud. 520. That's about a quarter of the way to the $2 trillion that Elon Musk says he can get over 10 years. So we're really closer to this thing than a lot of people think, aren't we?
Yeah, and I bet the numbers are a lot worse than that. If you look at Social Security fraud, if you look at over the COVID-19 fraud that was happening all across the country, where local governments were appropriated money and it was being abused, and all sorts of people are now getting arrested for having some type of illegal scheme to get that money. So I think it's actually more than that. And what DOGE is doing to go into these systems using data to be able to reflect these numbers and see for a fact what we have been wasting and what has been fraudulently being spent across our country is very important of analysis for us to do, especially as Republicans, as we go into this process of budget reconciliation to cut as much spending as we possibly can to give the tax cuts to the American people.
By the way, quick final answer on this, Congressman Steube. You've been very vocal about criticizing the lack of accountability from our spending out in Ukraine. What do you make of the latest from Zelensky?
Hey, look, I stand behind what President Trump is doing, what Marco Rubio is doing. He said he's gonna get peace out in Ukraine, and I think that President Trump is going to do that. And you need a strong leader to be able to do that.
Yeah, I wonder if we're ever going to get accountability for where all of our money to Ukraine went. Gentlemen, we got to leave it at that. Thank you so much, Congressman Pat Fallon and Greg Steube.